they're very symbolic animals, which is also why you can find them in art from any time period. They've inspired a lot of artwork.
Oh,
And I think that's because they bring us in touch with a lot of different feelings and emotions and memories. So I had this specific print called Facing the Unknown, which was of a Palomino gelding just standing facing towards the sea. That print didn't sell because it was a pretty horse looking out into the sea. It sold because people connected with that feeling of facing the unknown, of facing something that they weren't quite sure of, how it was going to go. Or I also had one of the collectors mail me that she had purchased this piece and she was going through a very tough separation. And this piece was one of the things that kept her going because it served as a reminder that everything was going to be okay, even though she was also facing the unknown.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Kat, thank you so much for being here on the Touch of a Mustang podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am super excited to talk to you. I have followed you for a while. You have just the most gorgeous Instagram account I think I've ever seen, full of these beautiful images of horses. So for anyone who doesn't know you, can you give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kat, as you've already said. I am an equine photographer. I am 28 years old, and I've been doing this since I was 10, starting in the very, very, I would just take the train around to horse owners and photograph them and their horses. And so since 2017, I've been traveling as well. And that's a big part of my job. I love traveling to different countries and seeing different horse cultures and photographing that as well. For quite a few years, I would mainly focus on paid client work. But nowadays, most of my income come from print sales.
Okay.
So I've just shifted my focus. And mainly I photograph what I like, and then I hope other people will like it as well, as much that they want to put it on their walls.
The images you capture are absolutely beautiful. Definitely worth checking it out. Tell us why horses? How did you end up becoming involved or were drawn to horses, and how has that journey unfolded to you to where now you do it full time and you get to travel between countries and do it, which is beautiful. What a dream.
So I grew up on a farm.
Mhm.
We mainly had cattle, but I shared a passion with horses with my mom. So I tend to say that horses have been one of the main constants of my life. So, no matter what age, I would have been around horses. When I was a teenager, I thought that I would go on to become a horse trainer. I also did a whole education. But then with my photography evolving, I discovered that was not the road I wanted to take. I was not supposed to be a horse trainer, but I really enjoyed just observing and watching and getting to photograph them. And yeah, so that's kind of what led me. So they've always been a part of my life and quite a big part of my life as well.
What role have they kind of played in your life? You said you grew up with them. Did you grow up riding them? I know something I see often on your account is kind of the lessons that you get from the horses, which is something I've also experienced. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Your journey with horses, what that's been like for you to build a life with them?
So I were a very introverted child, and I didn't have the easiest time in school, which I think a lot of people who are drawn to horses can relate to, because they don't pass any judgment. You can just spend time with them without any expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was that really drew me to them. And I've never been that much of a rider. I don't really do any riding these days either. I do have a horse which I've had for 10 years and I can ride him, but I sometimes joke that he's my emotional support animal.
Yeah.
He's just there, and he's just, his job is mainly just to make me happy and provide that space that I've always experienced since I was a child.
Yeah, be able to spend time with them.
Yeah, exactly. I would spend hours out on the pasture just sitting and, being with them and watching them. And
So share with us some more about your work and kind of the things that you try to capture when you go out with horses. What are some of your goals or hopes when you go out to try and capture some of their beauty, which you do so well?
I think one of the main factors for me is that a big part of my work is trying to include the horses. So, in a way that, sometimes when we photograph them, I can get the feeling that we're using them a bit as, props. So they become like a prop to whatever wish we have, whatever photo we have in our head.
Yeah.
And I always try to include the horses as much as possible. And I always try to be very aware of them. I don't, it's like a 50-50 if I photograph the horses like free in big pastures or if I photograph them where we have this photo halter on that I later edit out.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when we photograph them in halters and we make them do stuff, I try to be very, very aware that we're not pushing them over their boundaries,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is also why I can sometimes get a little bit self-aware that I don't have any. Most of my photos are not spectacular in the way that, there's not a lot of action going on in a lot of them. If you take a look through my work, most of the images are actually just horses standing still.
Yeah.
This is also because when you go out and watch a herd of horses, 95% of the time, there's not a whole lot of action. They
Right.
just kind of are and they move around. And yeah, it's not, that's what I really try to be respectful of the horses while taking these photos.
Yeah, which is very honorable. I think that's a lot of times horses kind of like people come in and then we do what we want with them and then we put them back and they can do what they want in that time. But I found that if you can kind of go in there in that headspace where you're just sharing time together, that a lot of times they're really happy, active participants with us. Like they, for some reason, which is a little bit of a mystery to me, like they like to be around us and interact with us and kind of see what's going on. I definitely saw some of that where the horses were pretty curious about you and what you were doing and kind of nuzzling up as you're looking at your camera. So that's fun to see.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's what happens most of the time. So when I first arrive, most horses can be a little bit standoffish, especially in herds, because they're like, oh, as you said, many horses have an expectation like there's a human, it's gonna come and do something to me. But after that first while has passed and they get to see that I just kind of move around and I'm just there, I'm not trying to do anything, I'm not trying to pet them, they become very curious of me and they're like, oh, I have to go and see what's up with this one that's just sitting in the grass and doing nothing.
Yeah. And that's kind of neat because when you do that, I think it's almost like they'll let you be a part of their herd. You can just enter their world for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to us about horses as memories, as like what happens when we see these pictures of horses, or what have you found?
So most of the times I find that my prints doesn't sell because it's just, a photo of a horse.
Hmm.
A print sells because it connects people with either memories. Some people, some of my collectors are horse owners or people who have been close to horses all their life. But there can also be collectors who maybe have never spent time with horses, but they're very symbolic animals, which is also why, you can find them in art from any time period. They've inspired a lot of artwork. And I think that's because they bring us in touch with a lot of different feelings and emotions and memories. So I had this specific print called Facing the Unknown, which was of a Palomino gelding just standing facing towards the sea. That print didn't sell because it was a pretty horse looking out into the sea. It sold because people connected with that feeling of facing the unknown, of facing something that they weren't quite sure of, how it was going to go. Or I also had one of the collectors mail me that she had purchased this piece and she was going through a very tough separation. And this piece was just, one of the things that kept her going because it served as a reminder that, everything was going to be okay, even though she was also facing the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really neat to hear because I've definitely heard people who have had that experience when they're with a horse. I've had people share experiences where they've been able to relate to the horse in that way. They can kind of see through the horse some of their experiences play out. That's really cool to think that even just through a picture, horses can do that same thing where they kind of teach us lessons maybe we need or give us courage in whatever our situation is, help us to not feel alone or to feel like whatever challenges we're facing are doable. So that's really neat to hear those stories and how it impacts people that are just looking at a picture of a beautiful horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you found that same thing for you at times where you've been with the horses and they kind of give you that inspiration or encouragement or connection to maybe something that you're experiencing?
Absolutely. And I think for me, what is really neat about what I do is I get to keep these memories. So it's not just something I experience once and then I forget about it. I get to take the photographs, and then one of the best parts of it is when I get home and I have to sort through the photos, I have to edit them, but then I get to relive that all over again. And oftentimes I may not notice it as much in the moment as I do afterwards when I'm looking at the photo. So I think that's one of the really cool things about this job is that I get to keep, those lessons. I get to keep
Yeah.
those experiences.
That's very interesting. And I've heard that same thing with people just spending time with horses, that a lot of times it's in the moments after when you're kind of reflecting back on that experience that you have these things pop in your head or you're relating to them or seeing something that you didn't notice maybe in that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you go about choosing what horses you're going to take pictures of, where you're going to do it? How does that all play out from maybe you're headed to take some pictures to the final product?
This is always quite a difficult question to answer for me, and I get asked about it a lot, especially in interviews. Like, what is your vision, and how do you
Hmm.
get there? And I think I might go about it a little bit differently than most photographers, because I don't necessarily have like a clear vision. But most of the time I show up and I kind of let actually the horses decide what is going to happen and what kind of photos will come out of it. Then of course I get, we have to do a little bit of preparation, and I get a lot of inspiration from, again, looking at the different horse cultures. Depending on the country I'm visiting, I can reach out to larger horse farms, or I can via Instagram get in touch with, single horse owners who'd want to do something with me. And then I try to keep the frame as flexible as possible, depending on the horses and what we're able to do. And so it's difficult to answer because I don't really I don't get a vision in my head about, okay, I want this photo and then we need to take these steps to get there. Oftentimes it's not, I wouldn't say it's accidental, but still it very much depends on what the horses are willing to participate in.
Yeah. Do you feel like that flexibility has given you options you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. Also because you don't get locked in on anything specific. And I find that with horses, it's a very, very valuable trait to be flexible, because we have to remember that they don't have any desire to have any photos taken of them. They don't have necessarily any agenda, or they're just here, in the here and now, and they respond to what is happening around them.
Tell us more about the different places where you've taken pictures and how, kind of what you alluded to, how the culture and the landscape changes the feeling of the picture, the things that you capture.
Yeah, so one of my very big inspirations is Scotland. I've been there 4 times now, and I'm very lucky that they have these very, very cool little Highland ponies. And if you find the right places, they're usually allowed to go out in the Highlands on large, large pastures, which are kind of like nature reserves. It's not really a pasture, but they're let out there to graze. I really like Scotland, but that's because it has such an ancient feeling to it, like the
Yeah.
Highlands and the ponies, and there's just so much history there, which definitely has inspired me a lot. And then I've been to Canada as well, which I really, really like the mountains and, this quite wild landscape. And then you pair it with, I mostly photograph quarter horses over there, which also, there's a different kind of deep history running, especially with the ranches and the work that these horses have been doing in cooperation with their humans. Then you have Portugal, which is a whole different thing altogether, because Portugal and Spain are probably quite different, in the way they keep horses compared to the rest of Europe.
Hmm.
Maybe a little bit more old school. So I visited the National Stud in Portugal, where they keep the stallions in stables for the entire day, and they get, taken out and ridden. Which, when you say just that sentence, it, people can think, oh, that's horrible. Those horses must live, a very unfulfilled life. And in some aspects they do. But then again, I also saw some of the finest horsemanship that I've ever seen. So these, the Portuguese riders are very in control of their own emotions, wherein, a lot of Europe, you can see people, when they get frustrated with horses, they tend to take it out on them. And that was never something I saw in Portugal. The riders were also, they were always very fair, and it was always the same answer. So it didn't, change depending on whether or not they had a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think that was kind of the reason why these stallions were super, super well behaved, of course, but they also seemed quite content giving the frame that they had been put in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was because they knew what to expect. They had a daily routine, and it didn't change, and the riders were the same. So these horses, just the fact that they knew what to expect actually maybe made their lives easier compared to other places. So it's always different kind of topics or experiences and things that I notice, which is why I think it's so cool to be visiting these different countries. And of course, I draw that into the photography as well.
Yeah. How has that broadened your perspective to see those different philosophies that are used? I know a lot of people maybe think like, this is the way to do it. This is the best way for horses. And then you're able to go and see different ways where horses are living happily. How has that influenced you in your art?
I think one of the cool things about being a photographer is that you can kind of be an observer. So you're not actively a part of what is going on at the places that you're visiting. You get to just, step back and observe and notice all these little things. And I think it's a fine line, because there's also ethics involved that you have to, in my opinion, you have to be aware of, and you have to decide where you want to stand.
Mm-hmm.
But I think being a photographer gives me that opportunity to maybe see it from a lot of different sides, and getting to observe horses in different settings. I definitely think it's broadened my view and made me, I want to say, more tolerant, but then again, that's not quite the right word. It's just,
Understanding, maybe?
yeah, like you can see it from several different sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Varied perspectives of how it works well. Talk a little bit more about some of the ethics you found that work well for you when you're approaching a horse, when you're having them as part of your art.
So because I took this whole horse trainer education, which was quite alternative at the time, so it was quite progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that benefited me in a way that helps me read the horses. So I'm very, very strong on the opinion that you need to know the animal that you're working with, and you need to understand them, especially when we're working with them in confined settings, like giving them halters on and stuff. You really need to be sharp. I come across a lot of different horse photos, and unfortunately, a lot of them in the past has shown horses in quite a lot of discomfort. It may not be it may not be 100% obvious to everyone, but if you know a little bit about horses, you can see the eyes that they're tense, or they're just, not very happy. And that's why I'm quite strong on the fact that you need to really respect the animal that you're working with, and need to know how they work, know how they think. So last year was the first time I created this kind of photography retreat. I have a very, very skilled friend here in Denmark who does a lot of horse behavior observations. We have quite a few. They're not wild ponies, but they're like feral, which are grazing and part of like conservation projects and stuff. And she is hired to go and just observe these ponies and write down her observations. And she is super, super competent in horse language and horse behavior, especially, horses in between. So I made this retreat in collaboration with her, because I wanted to provide a space where people who wants to photograph horses can come and actually not just learn how to photograph, but also learn about the animal that they're working with.
That is really neat because I think that is one thing that is sometimes missing is that piece of taking a step back, looking at the horse and seeing, what are they experiencing? What are they feeling and how can we work within that together with the two parties that are there with all their different emotions and expectations. How has that developed for you over time? Was that more difficult at first? Is it something that came pretty natural? Did you have experiences that gave you particular insights you didn't have before?
I was very big on alternative horse training in my teens as well.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I've never been that much of a rider. I preferred training. I did a lot of groundwork. I did a lot of educating myself on the mental part
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
working with horses, which I definitely think helped me in this work because I already have quite a lot of experience working and watching horses and determining where they're at. And I think maybe sometimes I get a little bit too careful. I prefer having to ask only, the most necessary of the horses when we're photographing them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I could probably, ask a bit more, but
Yeah.
in I think it's needed in the photography space, equine photography space. It is needed that we become aware of giving more space and not being as pushy as we sometimes can be. And so in that aspect, I think it's good, and I think it's important that we put more focus on knowing the animal that you're working with and learning how to work with them so you're not going over their boundaries.
And I think that a lot of that's really reflected in your photography because if I were to say one word that encompasses the images that I've seen of yours, it's that they're all very peaceful. They really capture that calm, gentle spirit, that peaceful spirit of the horse. When, like you say, a lot of times most of the time horses aren't running around and fighting or rearing or any of those things that maybe some of those more dramatic pictures are. It is a very calm, peaceful, quiet experience to spend time with horses over time. So I think that your photography really captures their presence in that way, which is really beautiful.
I'm very happy you think that.
I was just looking at some this morning and I was just talking about the horses and their souls and stuff. And I really feel like some of the videos you had, like that's exactly what it captures is just that peaceful, gentle feeling that a lot of people feel when they join up with horses in the various ways that they do. So very beautiful work.
I think it's important to remember that horses are animals who very much want to avoid conflict.
Yeah.
They're not, they don't go
They run
seeking
from it. Yeah.
trouble. Yeah, exactly. And especially we observed these wild pony herds last year during the retreat, and it's so obvious how much trouble they go to not get in trouble with all the other horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very keen observation of horses and how they interact with one another. I agree. Um, Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that the horses have taught you as you've worked with them and as you've been with them. A lot of the things you share on Instagram are kind of lessons that it feels to me like the horses give to you as you're in their presence. What are some of the things that you've learned from them?
Oh, I've learned, so I'm self-taught. I didn't go to school to become a photographer, and
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that most of, many of the most important lessons that I've learned has come from horses.
Yeah.
And I think it's not as much, it's a bit hard to put into words because they're not, it's not because a horse comes up to me and it says to me, you have to let this go or
Right.
be
Yeah.
more brave but they kind of become vessels for these lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've taught me to let go. They've taught me, the Highland ponies in Scotland really cemented for me that I am supposed to do this work for me and not for others. So the first time I went there, I was still doing a lot of paid client work.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting there on the hillside with them, it just became very, very clear to me that this is, I was supposed to do this because I wanted to do it, not because it had to become, not because it was a business that needed to generate X amount of income and I needed to pursue the photos I wanted to take. And that became, obvious that that was the right way because it just took off from there. They teach me to be present.
Yeah.
Which is also, like I said before, I don't necessarily realize these lessons before I get back home and get to look at the photos, because in the moment I try to be as present as possible and
Yeah.
try to notice all the little things happening. Because that's the other thing, when you don't photograph a whole lot of action, when you don't generate the movement or control what is happening, you're also kind of forced to start looking for the little things. You're kind of forced to start noticing,
Mm,
start observing like what is happening in order to get these photos that are not just photos.
yeah. I love that. That makes me think of one of your pictures where I think it's the horse's mane and they have like a leaf in their hair, which I just love. It's so beautiful just to like see they're like in tune with nature in that way, where they're a piece of each other in that way.
I'm so sad because sometimes, especially in this day and age, everything can be criticized or judged for being AI. And I really try to do my best to say to people like this, I didn't even put the fern there. It was there. It was, it was
Yeah,
real, and it was.
I believe it. My horses get stuff in their mane all the time. I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. But yeah, that was just such a beautiful capture, I thought, to see the fern and the mane in that way. Has that been a challenge with AI coming up?
Not in not in the work that I do, not in the whole
Yeah.
process of acquiring the photos, but definitely the whole social media game and,
Yeah.
deciding on what to put out there and how to put it out there. And you're competing with a lot more now, if I
Yeah.
can say it like that, and people are getting very suspicious, which I understand, because
Hmm.
it's tiring trying to figure
Yeah.
out constantly
Try
what
and
you're.
question what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
And it is a tricky world, but I do think that the people who have seen and experienced the realness of horses, you can almost tell the difference just by the way it's captured. And yours definitely have a spirit and a feeling of realism and of coming from the horses and from those beings that are actually alive and living their lives in the various places where you
Yeah,
film them. Do you remember any of the specific instances when you learned things like you said letting go? That's like a huge thing that my mare taught me, like at like right the time that I needed it. So I'm always curious how those lessons unfolded. Do you remember any of the specific instances besides the one with the Highland ponies?
I think it's more of like letting go is more of like an overall being. I can't really pinpoint an exact experience, but then again, that's the whole thing that's so great about having these photos is you can get to go back and look at them and relive those different moments. It's difficult for me because that's why I say I feel like they're vessels.
Mm-hmm.
Holding these lessons is because I don't necessarily pinpoint exact moments, but
Yeah.
those lessons kind of get to live in the photos afterwards. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It is so interesting to talk to different people because it's a lot of the same things. And ironically, I think a lot of the things that we fight against in our world today, being in the present moment, is one that is really tricky with everything coming at us. That's a huge one that so many people talk about. They found a way to do that with horses. And it's cool to think that, you don't have to be out in a field with horses. You can take that picture into your home and be able to have that moment where you can just be present for a moment and just enjoy that beauty for a moment instead of, scrolling or running or doing to be present.
The calm in the chaos is definitely from especially my time as a child. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever the outside world would get too much, I would go out and spend time with them. And it's kind of the same thing I'm doing now when I go travel around the world and I get to spend time with horse herds.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because when I am not traveling, I spend a lot of, my working hours at my desk, look at a screen, I edit photos, I edit reels, and, all that sort of stuff. And I'm quite a lot in my head,
Mm-hmm.
which is why these travels and getting to go out with these horses really brings me back.
Yeah.
It's also whenever I'm feeling stuck, I know that I probably need to book the next plane ticket soon, because
Mm-hmm.
my biggest inspiration comes from getting to go out in the world, and preferably at least once during the trip, getting to go out and sit with a herd of horses, because there you can look at your phone, but I try not to, because I'm busy trying to notice what to photograph.
Mm-hmm.
And that just brings me back into the present moment and maybe gives a space for all those thoughts that you maybe push away a little bit in your daily day. So when you get to just sit
Yeah.
there in the grass and just observe the horses, the thoughts can also just, yeah.
When you're talking about that to me, it's almost like you're able to release those thoughts where it's like you can maybe be with your phone and you scroll through and your thoughts are gone. But like as soon as you get off, it kind of comes back. But I feel like when I go out with the horses, and maybe you've experienced the same thing, like it's almost like you can work through those thoughts and release them.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving it a space to be, because we as humans, especially with our phones and computers and televisions, we are very good at filling the silence and filling,
Not
whenever
feeling
there's not.
uncomfortable, not having to
Yeah,
face things.
exactly. And this is, one of the only places where I'm forced. I say forced, but I kind of enjoy it, just getting to sit down without
Yeah.
any distractions and just simply being there and enjoying what is in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely not a bad job, right?
It's the best job.
Are there any particular travels you took or shoots that you had that are especially memorable for you, either what you captured or what you experienced?
So definitely the one with the Palomino on the beach. He
Mhm.
was quite a young horse at the time. I think he was 4 or 5.
Mhm.
And this one stands out to me because he had never seen the beach before. So when he arrived, he was, wide-eyed and
Yeah,
looking at it and being like, what, is
pretty
that?
worried about it.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
So this was in Portugal, and both the owners and the horse trainer was there. And the Portuguese people are so sweet. Like they will do anything to get you the photos that you want.
Mm,
But that also means maybe pushing the horses quite a lot of times. And
mhm.
they tried to get him into the water at first. And he was like, going back and forth and being
Yeah.
quite unsure. And then I said, okay, let's, can we just all, you don't have to get him into the water. You can just let him be and let him calm down in this environment. And he was still unsure about the water. But then we moved up into the dunes at some point, and I still just told them, and I think they might have thought that I was a little bit crazy to have traveled all the way to Portugal to tell them to just let a horse stand there. But then at some point up in the dunes, when they were just doing nothing, he was just allowed to be there and watch. His eyes softened. And that's the thing about, I can take photos of horses being, in situations that made them uncomfortable that might look spectacular, but I wouldn't want to do anything with those photos because I know what the experience was for the horse in the moment.
Mm.
So I think that's also why I'm so careful and so observant, because I wouldn't want to have photos where I can look back and think, oh, but that was when they pushed the horse into the sea or he was very, very uncomfortable. So that is quite a big memory for me, because I remember specifically noticing the moment when his eyes softened and he let out a
Mhm.
big sigh, and the photos after that was just so much better than if we would have kept pushing him.
Yeah. And such an interesting lesson, I think, for life that kind of goes along with letting go, because you were willing to capture and see where it went. You got this incredible photo that has now gone on and touched other people's lives and been there for them in its times of need, and not the photo that maybe they thought you wanted or that you even expected to get, but because you're willing to be open to that experience, which I think life's like that a lot. Sometimes we really want to hang on tight and we want to force things and it's not working out, but that's how we feel like it's supposed to be. And it just becomes a really big struggle, really uncomfortable. And then we step back and kind of are like, all right, life, do your thing, do what you have to do, maybe have a little bit more flexibility. And a lot of times that's when really beautiful things happen in life also. So I love that story. That's really beautiful. What are some ways that horses have personally affected you in your life and just being able to build a life with them in the way that you have?
I think because of having such a hard time in school, feeling very wrong, feeling like I should be something other than what I was.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, is one of the big things they've given me is that it's okay that I am the way that I am.
Yeah.
They held space for me, like all of me, 100% of me, and they never passed judgment, which is also one of the things that I really want to with my social media and, reaching people. I really want to pass on that feeling that you're never alone in how you feel. Whether you share that feeling with a horse or you share that feeling with other people, you're never alone and you're allowed not to fit into boxes that society or other people might expect you to fit into. And they continue to do that today. So I have the horse that I've had for 10 years, and I've just recently gotten another horse. And I think that's one of the biggest factors is I can just go out with them and I can be myself, both with my own horses, but then again, also with the horses that I'm photographing on my trips.
Yeah. Yeah, that piece of acceptance really is huge, because I think a lot of us struggle with feeling like we're supposed to be something specific. We're supposed to fit a certain way, and we don't, or we change to fit that and feel that piece of loss. But horses, I think, really what they value most is just you going in there honestly with who you are. And they're kind of like, we'll take you who you are, but just tell us that in advance. And
Exactly, because you're told a lot of experience with humans, you're often taught to be something that you're not.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah,
is often rewarded if you
yeah, for sure.
manage to put on this mask. And then you go out with the horses and you experience the complete opposite. That if you try to be something you're not, they're going to be like, hell no, I don't want anything to do with you until you can be, true to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that same thing as a really beautiful thing about horses. Well, to close up, can you tell everybody where they can find you if they are interested in seeing your art, where they can purchase it? And we'll definitely include this also in the show notes so people can just click on easy links and be able to find you. But where's the best places to find your work and see the pictures and the videos?
So the best place is definitely either go to my website, which is KatjaJensen.com, or just go to my Instagram, which is KatjaCaptures. Yeah, those are the two main. If you go there, you can't go wrong. You're kind of in the middle of it all.
And they're absolutely gorgeous pictures. Anybody who loves horses should definitely check them out. And they really do bring the soul of the horse to life and kind of show what the horse is. So I just really appreciate your work. It's some that I've discovered a while ago. And you have a lot of times you even have these beautiful thoughts that go along with the beautiful imagery that are very touching. A lot of times the messages, kind of like we kind of talked about, that are so powerful to hear, because they're not necessarily the big loud messages that you're getting everywhere, but the ones that speak more to your soul, to inside of you, and what you might be feeling, the things that maybe sometimes we don't talk about or we don't explore because it doesn't it doesn't fit in our nice tidy societies and cultures so well. So thank you for the work you do and for definitely sharing your talent, and also just the spirit that horses can share with us in our life. And I think it's beautiful that people can take that spirit of the horse and bring it into their home in such a beautiful way. And I think your commitment to the ethics of how you want to do it they really show in your art and how it's presented.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on my first podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that we got to take advantage of that. And yeah, I hope that horse lovers everywhere will definitely, if they haven't already found you, that they will see your work, because it's absolutely gorgeous. Anything's planned in the future? Trips planned in the future?
Yes, I'm going to Spain this April, which is actually with the retreat group that we hosted last year. So they get the opportunity to go out. There's a very, very cool lady called Lucy Reese, which lives in Spain and has truly wild horses out in the mountains. So they got the opportunity to go with me and my friend on a different kind of retreat. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then hopefully I'll be going back to Scotland as well this year.
I'll be looking forward to seeing what you capture there. Are there going to be other opportunities for people if they want to join you on the retreats and see the horses in person?
There will be. I'm hosting 2 this year, but they are both sold out. But we are planning on hosting another 2 next year. So one in summer and one in fall. And people can find all the information on my website as well. And they can sign up for a wait list. So they're the first to know.
Awesome. Yeah, that's neat. And I bet incredible experiences to be out there and to be with the horses and to learn from both of you and to be able to see them. So that is a great opportunity. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us and talking about horses with me.
I really enjoyed it. It's always nice to talk with like-minded people.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.